I've always had suicidal thoughts, but I was never suicidal. Hey guys, so today's going to be a very serious topic, and the topic is going to be about my battles with depression. So me personally, as a young girl, I had a fairly good life. Now that I am older, I do realize that I was raised in a broken home, as my siblings call it. They unfortunately were the ones that were more affected than I was, but at the same time, my family believes that I was mentally affected because the older they grew up, they became stronger. And when I was younger, I didn't really notice it. I noticed it, but I didn't care about it. It wasn't something that was on my mind because they were getting the hard times then and learned to grow up without it. And the older I got, the more I started to realize that I was actually part of that broken home, and my life kind of crashed as an adult. And with that is that my father hit my mom more than I can think, more than I probably had seen. To this day, my mom brings up the topic of, you know, her life back when we were kids, and she states that, you know, it was good that I didn't see it. But not seeing it doesn't mean that I didn't hear it. I was in the same home. I woke up to seeing the large holes in the wall, broken glass, things like that. Broken doors. We've had to replace doors in the house. And, you know, as a child, children remember things. And I guess it didn't hit me till I was older. So my family, including my siblings, were all affected mentally and physically by this history by my father. I was not affected mentally or physically at that time. My father never touched me. I was treated as, you know, the youngest who didn't see and make sure that she stays innocent. The older I got, the worse I became. I had a lot of learning disabilities and challenges in my life, which are discussed in many of my videos. You can find them in my diagnosis series playlist if you want to go and find out any information about that. And so, long story short, or not to make it any longer, by the time I was about, we'll say, I don't know, 11, I was in school and I started clinging onto adults a little too much. It wasn't sexual, but it also was not sexual. I started to fall in love with these people, and I became close with the school therapist, and she knew that something was wrong, and they tried to talk to me, them meaning her as well as my teachers. I was just very clingy. So I do want to mention that at the ripe age of around 12, something may or may not have happened to me. I don't want to talk much about it because it's something that I don't discuss, and I guess it's because I don't know if it happened or not. And that is a male in my family. I'm not going to say who in my family, whether it be a close relation family, like a immediate family, or a distant relative. But someone in my family may or may have not tried to molest me. That I don't know, and they were confronted and they have denied it. But since I honestly don't remember much, I do remember the situation, and that was, I don't feel comfortable discussing it. And I think if I had known, if I knew for sure if it had happened, I would love to tell you what happened in that very moment, but I will say that I was around 12 years old and I was sleeping on the couch and this person was passed out on the floor, and a couple times I caught them with their hand under my PJ, like my dress. They didn't actually do anything, and I remember after the third attempt, I believe, the second attempt, I stayed awake, terrified. And that morning after they had woke up, it was like it never happened, it wasn't brought up. So then I started to second guess, because I pictured the movies where they go, if you tell your mommy, you know, I'll hurt them or something, or if there's a little secret. It was nothing. It was, and I had to find out that it was just after my sister my sister and my mom told me that my sister was molested as a young girl, and so I know that children hear things and they tend to repeat it, and it happened just a little after, and because my parents were split up, maybe it was just something I was doing, and I don't know, and so we don't really know about that. And throughout my years seeing therapists off and on, they've always brought up that I have PTSD, but still to this very moment, I'm 100% positive that I do not have PTSD, because I remember that moment and then it kind of went away and that's it. Yes, up until I was about 19, it was still a topic for other reasons, but since then, and it's not been a topic, and that's really it. But who's to say that the way I am isn't because of that? You know, I actually started getting more mental issues a little bit after that, honestly. I've had a few prior to that, but they were more academic issues with a few different, like, depressive episodes, so. And then by the time I moved to Minnesota from New York at the age of 13, things were cleared up, so I thought. I made friends, I found my identity, my sexuality, the whole thing. And then after my first year of being here, everything kind of fell apart again. I'm gonna sneeze. So when I was in 10th grade, this was after 1 year of living in a new state, I was seeing the high school psychiatrist or psychologist, therapist, I'm not sure what their title was. And they started me on Depakote, which is an antidepressant. And I started seeing a therapist outside of school. I quit therapy outside of school and in school many times because I hated it. I also never liked my therapist. I didn't think they did much. They always just, oh, what'd you do at school today? Did you do your homework? They didn't really want to, like, talk about why I was the way I was. I'm not exactly sure on the time, but I do know that I started drinking right when I graduated high school. I did not drink beforehand. I was actually a good student in the sense of I always went to school. I never skipped school. I wasn't good academically, but I was a good student. And so I waited till I graduated high school in 2003, and then I started drinking a lot. I mean, full-blown alcoholic. Now, yes, I was able to not drink the next day without having any reactions, but I definitely had a problem. It was crazy. I mean, a 1.75 bottle, which is like those big jugs, I would drink with 3 of my friends every day, and we'd drink it in a day and a half. It was crazy. I started becoming a cutter, and I was either really depressed or really happy or really angry, and it got bad. I fell in love the first time when I was 19, and I moved in with them. We both moved out of our family homes and moved in together at our own place pretty much within like the first month or two. Bad idea. They were just a couple years older than me, 3 years older than me. And I guess it all hit me then and there. I was still drinking partying. I was young. I was, I was 19. But then the relationship started ending, and that was because I don't remember anything, honestly. But I do know that it was me. I was becoming angry. I was probably starting fights, things like that, and the relationship ended. After the relationship ended, I put myself in the psychiatric ward for the first time, and I was there for the 3-day, 72-hour hold. After that, of course, I was let go, and I was going through more therapy, different kinds of doctors, different towns, and then trying to do it without any help. I did a lot of writing, poetry, and nothing was helping. I just kept drinking and cutting. Now, my cutting wasn't for suicide. It was to help with my pain. I felt like when I cut, I was able to breathe, and I was able to go on my day without having that crazy sadness in my heart. And when I was in the hospital the first time, I had a lot of information that I wrote down, and I kind of want to share with you guys what I wrote at the time. I'm letting you know that most of it won't make any sense. It doesn't make sense to me, but I want you to see how I was thinking at the age of probably about this time, because it was after the relationship. I was probably around 20 years old, my first time being admitted, and you'll see a lot in there, but I want you to see how I was. Everything from my psychiatric ward visit, and I just found this as I was recording, and this was from the very first time I went, and it says, I signed myself into the psychiatric ward July 23rd, 2006. I talk about how my friends basically kept distance with me, and my best friend had her dad put a restraining order on me because they felt that I was very ill, which is a little funny because to find out she has been in and out of the... I actually was in the hospital for the first time, which was March 17th of 2006, and then I went back in July 25th. So this was my first visit, and this one here was actually my second visit. And at the bottom it says, I'm just so confused about what I am going through. How can I help myself get better? I had to go through classes and stuff, and there were signs of unhealthy boundaries I had to list down. So I thought I'd share some of these for anybody who may need some help. I've written here that I want to die, that I want to get rid of all the pain that I was feeling. I want to die, die, die. You had to be part of groups while in the hospital, so I have phobic symptoms, psychomatic symptoms, anxiety symptoms, things like that you had to list just to seem like you were part of the groups, that you were able to leave the hospital. Other things I had: am I worth living? Am I worth loving? Do I deserve sadness and heartache? I had so many questions. You push my buttons to when I take that blade and drag it across my skin and pray for the courage to press down. This one here, it is quite stupid, so I really don't want to read it out loud, but it's about my parents. That one here is about going to a gun range and how I feel about guns and what I would do with it, and me doing it, and hearing screams, and hearing the screams of me but not anyone else. Harder than you think. Cutting is easier said than done. Me being sick is part of my life. That I told my girlfriend that I no longer loved her, but that was because I was sick. And I spent days writing, or one day writing 3 pages worth of my thoughts. Even cross onto this page and see all dry blood that doesn't even look like blood anymore because this is back from 2006. So that right there just makes me feel very vulnerable. I don't discuss my history with depression because I feel like people look down on you. I am very open about all my medical issues, but this. You would even look on my Instagram about a couple months ago when I would post in my bio all of my diagnoses, and mental health of any sort was never mentioned. I don't bring it up, and I was never planning on making this video, but I felt that it was needed, whether it was something I was currently going through or if it was in my past, because no matter what, I have it, and no matter how great I'm able to mask these symptoms, anything can happen, and the next day I could be sick again, because no matter what, I am technically sick with these conditions. And you know, as you can see, that I was in the hospital twice, and it looked like I was in the hospital March of 06 and then July of 06, and then I know for a fact that I went to the psychiatric ward for a third time. It might have been like a year later, maybe even 2 years later. I don't have any written stuff about that. If I do, there's just no date, so I don't know when it was from. And every time I regretted it because I felt like I didn't belong there. Everyone was depressed and crazy, and I wasn't. I don't think I learned anything from being there, but I knew that I was supposed to be there. I only now know that as an adult, and now that I am better. So let's kind of reverse a little bit. Now, reverse from today. Throughout my time, I got better, and then I got worse, and got better and got worse, and it was pretty much like my life was just bouncing all over the place. And I started drinking again. I think it got really bad again when I was around 24. I'm not sure if that's when I went in for the third time to the psychiatric ward, maybe not. But when I was around 24, I started drinking a lot again, which then means I was getting mean and angry. And this is where things kind of got scary. I've never had suicidal thoughts, but I always had, I don't know how to say it, suicidal thoughts. So how about this? I've always had suicidal thoughts, but I was never suicidal, if that makes sense. So I would drive, and I pictured what I would do with my car and a semi-truck, and when I would drink, I would take my phone and throw it. I've shattered so many phones. There was a point, which was the one real memory I have throughout all my mental health issues, is where I had to move back home here in the house I am currently in, and in the room my dad is now currently in, which is right below me to the right. And it was my room, and I had just had a hysterectomy at the age of 24 and a knee construction. They were just a few months apart. And I was drinking, and I was breaking phones, and my life was falling apart to me. And there was no real reason. I was just drinking and just couldn't keep control of my emotions. I went upstairs, and I took a butcher knife and locked myself in my room. The door that was in my room wasn't a typical door, because we turned that room into a different kind of room, and it was a pure glass door. There was barely any wood on there, and I don't remember what happened, but I believe there was another person staying at my home for a little bit with my father and I, and she told him and woke him up. I don't remember. I know it was in the middle of the night. And so I'm assuming that either I texted someone and she called him or something, but he found out and he ran down the stairs and begged me to open the door, and I wouldn't. He broke down the door. He broke it completely in half, and got in. He took the knife, and that's all I really remember. I know I was blackout drunk, so I don't know what exactly happened. I became a huge cutter again. Again, it wasn't suicidal. I wasn't going in the correct direction. They were very superficial scratches. It looked like more like cat scratches. And, you know, around age 25, maybe 26, I fell in love. And to this very day, at the age of 34, I believe this person to be my true love, the one that you say you're one and only. Even if I were to fall in love again or marry, it would be like where you see in the movies where even your current boyfriend or girlfriend would know about this ex, and how they even knew that of all the girlfriends and boyfriends that you had in your history, that this is the one that got away. That would be this particular relationship I had. This person got away because I went from being sane again and learning to control things, and them not even knowing my history. Maybe they did, I don't remember. And then drinking, both of us, and I would get sad. So instead of getting pissed, my symptoms of drinking was sadness, and I would find every excuse to argue about being cheated on, even though I knew they weren't. And the next day, not really remembering, and them saying, you remember you broke up with me again last night? And I broke up with them half a dozen times, until that last time they said, but I'm done, we're broken up, like I officially am done. And I was broken. I did put myself into a psychiatric ward that day, but I didn't actually go in. I made it into the ER and was so broken that I was going to go back in, and I was so like, I can't do it, I don't want to go back in. So I sucked it up and drank a lot of water in the ER and found a way to beg them to not put me in, and I went home that day, thankfully. Otherwise, it would have been another time, a fourth time. So, but then I became depressed, and I moved back home again, and I started cutting again, drinking more again, not like the typical social drinking, and then I learned to control it again. And I don't believe I have cut since that relationship, or a little after, maybe a year after I finally got the help I needed. And the help was basically just me breathing and making it through. It took me 3 years to get over the relationship, and I mean 3 years. I'm able to bring up this person's name, I'm able to talk about it, I'm maybe even able to run into them and say hi. Just a few years ago, I wasn't able to, and I guess now that I think about it, the more I don't want to discuss it, because they did get away. But with that, I have a lot, and you know, I've learned to grow, and I'm not saying that I am perfect right now and that I am completely cured, because I'm not. I definitely think that cutting is behind me, because it's been many years, like 8-9 years, but I don't know what tomorrow holds for me, because I am technically depressed. I have major depressive disorder, or major depression disorder. I also have borderline personality disorder. That does kind of show every so often, but they're so minor that they just seem like I am just not in a good mood. But when it happens, I do know, and I've learned to control my anger and saying mean things to people, knowing that I'm going to regret them. I say them because I mean them, if I'm going to say anything at all. And so I've been through the ringer. I'm sure there's a lot more stories I have not mentioned, because there's just things I forget about or I'll remember later on. But I just want to say that there's always someone else out there who's going through what you're going through. Maybe some worse than others, but we are all going through it, and there's always someone out there who is able to help. Anybody, you can reach out to anybody, including a stranger, and I'm sure they will help out. There are hotlines out there, and I will actually link that in the description below for a suicide hotline. But know that you are not alone, and that I'm here if you need help with anything, and your family and friends are there, and if you feel that they aren't, ask a stranger for help. And that's my story, and with that, I will see you guys next time. Bye.